teachings, that together, his actions and teachings, together constitute what's called the Sunnah, or custom of the prophet. So Sunnah means custom. This is the second most important authority for Islam. After the Quran. Yeah. After the Quran. Yes.
Did he ever perform any miracles or anything?
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahilladzi arsala rasulahu bil huda wa dinil haqq liyuzhirahu 'ala dini kullihi wa kafa billahi syahida. Asyhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la syarikalah wa asyhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu la nabiyya ba'da. Berjumpa lagi dengan channel saya Mars Techno. Saya doakan semoga semua sahabat dalam keadaan sehat selalu. Pada video ini kami akan menampilkan
bagian kelima dari sebuah video yang kami terjemahkan dari channel Kristen yang menampilkan penjelasan tokoh Kristen wanita mengenai agama Islam kepada jamaat gereja Lutheran.
Nah sahabat, mari kita saksikan saja video selengkapnya dan saya akan sedikit mereaksinya.
Now, did they say you either convert to our religion or we're going to kill you?
There were some contextual battles like that, just like there are in our scriptures, but that's not at all what Islam is today. You are never including, and Christians have said the same thing, by the way, like to Native Americans. We baptize you or we will kill you.
Well, I guess you could even say if you're from Northern Europe,
yeah.
odds are
yeah,
if your ancestry is Northern European, odds are that's how you became it as well.
But that is not an Islamic practice today. If anybody does that, they're doing that in direct opposition to their own religious practice. So if somebody from, say ISIS or some fringe terrorist organization, if they're doing that in opposition to a standard of Islam, that you are only supposed to be Islam if you are not coerced into being, only supposed to be Muslim if you're not coerced into being Muslim. And I would say the same thing of Christianity. If somebody said, well, so-and-so says, become Christian or we'll kill you in the Spanish Inquisition forever ago, I would say the Spanish Inquisition went against what Jesus Christ would stand for. And what I as a Christian stand for today. I'm never going to hold a gun to somebody's head and say, profess Jesus as your Lord and Savior. That's ridiculous. It's not only a little bit off, it's antithetical. It's the opposite of what Jesus would ever do, right? Same with Islam. You're never supposed to coerce someone into conversion in Islam, ever. And any imam who is a clergy, and any religious scholar worth their salt in Islam would tell you that.
One other question.
Yeah.
Did the Romans and the Muslims fight? Was there great battles between them?
I'm not aware of battles. I completely could be just not aware.
You're talking about two different time periods.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any.
The Roman Empire had collapsed around the 400s.
Yeah, I don't know any.
Now, just from a historical, if you
go ahead,
the Roman Empire had collapsed in the 450s and was supplanted by the Byzantine Empire. So Constantine, that's where Constantinople. That was, rather than being Rome, the capital of the Byzantine Empire was Constantinople. Yes, there was conflict there between Islamic, but there was also conflict between Germanic tribes and Frankish tribes. So yes.
Okay, so
I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
I want to go off on the
No, it's totally fine.
I just wanted to know.
So Muhammad's unique significance for Islam is the belief that he is the final prophet. He's not the only prophet, but he's the final prophet, revealing the will of Allah fully and precisely and for all time. And so there have been occasionally groups that have said, well, we love Islam and we love Muhammad, but we believe that there's another prophet that came after. Like, for instance, the Baha'i tradition. The Baha'i tradition believes that they love Muhammad, but then there are other prophets that came later. Well, the Muslim tradition of Islam would say that's not really Islam then. Because real Islam is saying that he was the last prophet and there cannot be any more prophets after that. He is what's called the seal of the prophets, the last one. There is no need for Allah to choose another. So it is believed that in different times, God has revealed different prophets to reveal God's will partially. And Allah revealed the absolute last part of it. So there's no need for another one. So Muhammad, as I said, is merely human, but he is revered. Revered does not mean worshipped. It means greatly respected as the best of all humans. And his actions and his own teachings, he was careful to regard them as different, distinguish them differently, his teachings from the Quran. He was careful to say, this is my thought, but this is the Quran. Okay, just to make that clear. But his teachings, that together, his actions and teachings, together constitute what's called the Sunnah, or custom of the prophet. So Sunnah means custom. And if you hear people talk about the Sunnah, then that's what that is.
That's his teachings.
His teachings and his actions. This is the second most important authority for Islam. After the Quran. Yeah. After the Quran. Yes.
Did he ever perform any miracles or anything?
No, not so much perform like in a divine way, but he was involved in miracles. And so the big one was the Night of Power and Excellence, where he was given the miracle and being able to read the Quran. Another big one that Muslims hold to is this night where it's believed that he was miraculously transported from Mecca to Jerusalem, the holy city of Jerusalem, and then from there he ascended with the Archangel Gabriel through the 7 heavens that the Quran specifies. The Quran specifies that God made 7 heavens, and he ascended through the 7 heavens, and he saw the prophets Moses, he saw Abraham, he saw Jesus, and then he was in the very presence of Allah. That night is called the Ascension to Heaven. And that's one of 2 miracles involving Muhammad. So the Night of Power and Excellence and the Ascension to Heaven from Jerusalem. So when we say sometimes, people say, why is Jerusalem thought to be such a holy city for Muslims? I mean, we get the Mecca,
yes,
but why Jerusalem? It's because of that. It's because he was transported, Ascension to Heaven. So this is
he ascended, but he came back.
Yes, yes. So this is a focal point of Muslim piety. All right, let's talk a little bit further about Islam's primary teachings. And we've touched on some of these already, but the teachings of Islam are based ultimately on the Quran, first of all, on the Quran, and then secondly on the Sunnah, or the custom of the Prophet Muhammad. But, of course, great theological achievements have come about during the centuries, just like you have in Judaism and Christianity. The Western religions care very much about theology, which is different. If you've been in this course all along, it's different than looking at, say, for instance, East Asian religions of Zen Buddhism and Taoism, where the East Asian religious thought is that words get in the way. They complicate things. You cannot have a direct divine experience or understanding of God if you use too many words and too much logic and too much rational thought. It's distracting. That's an Eastern philosophy. And so you'll have, Zen gardens that are very simple and very calm and tranquil, and poems with very few words, not a lot. Okay? But in the Western religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, there's a great reverence for the word, the written and the spoken word. These 3 religions share many stories, many myths, sacred stories. And so there's this sense of appreciating theology, appreciating rational thought, appreciating the spoken and written word that these 3 religions really share. So there's a lack of consistent agreement between Muslim scholars and Muslim theologians throughout the ages, which explains why Islam tends to be very diverse, which is the same in Christianity and Judaism. If you're going to have religions that are based on a lot of theology, a lot of analysis, you're not going to have everybody agreeing. So I always say that if you meet someone and they're a Christian, and that's all you know about them, you know very little about them. Right? I mean, you know some things, like they probably love Jesus. I mean, some basics you know, but you know very little about them. They could be on one end of the spectrum or the other. They could be a high church Roman Catholic or an incredibly simple Amish person. They could be extraordinarily conservative or liberal, both politically and in terms of their religious piety. They could be anything on the map, right? I say the same thing, like if you meet somebody who says, I'm an American, you know very little about them, okay? I've even said this about denominations like Catholicism. If you meet somebody and they say, I'm a Catholic, you know very little about them. Well, the same thing is true with Islam. And we that are not in that group, you know, if you're not Muslim, we tend to think that other groups are not diverse. We tend to think that our groups, whatever our groups are diverse. Let me tell you a little aside. I have a friend who is he's a scholar of ethnic studies at a university in New York, and he asked his students, he's an African American man, he asked his students, he said, I don't want you to be inoffensive, I want you to just shout out any kind of racial slurs you've ever heard about these categories of people. And they're like, whoa, really? You know, yes, just shout it out, anything you've heard. And he said different categories of people, and people shouting out the racial slurs. And then he said Caucasian. And they said, well, I mean, it depends. I mean, are you talking about? Suddenly there was all this room for diversity because his students were Caucasian. So
suatu khotbah yang sangat menarik dari seorang tokoh wanita Kristen Lutheran Amerika Serikat yang sedang menjelaskan tentang ajaran agama Islam kepada jemaat gereja Lutheran Amerika Serikat. Pada video ini adalah bagian kelima. Sahabat bisa melihat pada playlist jika ingin melihatnya lebih lanjut. Link video akan kami lampirkan di deskripsi video. Sahabat bisa melihat video aslinya di sini jika ingin melihatnya langsung. Pada awal video ini, beliau ditanya apakah mereka atau Muslim mengatakan bahwa Anda perlu memasuki agama Islam atau convert Islam. Dijawab tokoh tersebut, itu bukanlah dari ajaran agama Islam. Yang tidak pernah Anda katakan bahwa orang Kristen telah melakukan kepada penduduk asli Amerika. Kami dapat membaptis Anda, atau jika tidak, kami akan membunuh Anda. Tetapi pemaksaan ajaran agama itu bukanlah dari praktik agama Islam hari ini. Karena jika ada yang melakukan hal tersebut, bahwasanya hal itu adalah sangat bertentangan langsung dengan praktek agama mereka sendiri. Jadi, jika seseorang dari Anda mengatakan ISIS atau organisasi teroris pinggiran lainnya, jika mereka melakukan hal tersebut atau pemaksaan agama, itu pada hakikatnya adalah bertentangan dengan ajaran agama Islam itu sendiri. Di dalam Al-Quranul Karim dikatakan bahwa la ikraha fiddin, yang artinya tidak ada paksaan dalam agama. Jadi di dalam agama Islam siapapun tidak diperbolehkan untuk memaksakan ajaran agama. Jika kita melihat lebih fair, di saat Kristen berkuasa di Spanyol, ada yang namanya inkuisisi, yaitu pemaksaan orang non-Kristen untuk memasuki agama Kristen. Jika mereka tidak mau, maka mereka akan dibunuh.
Sekian, wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.